falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
All right. Hi, and welcome to the Shift to Reason Radio, the Brainstorm production, where each of us tries to take a bit of a deep dive into our topic of the month using critical thinking, compassion, and skepticism. I'm Cory, and my panel tonight are Rene.
Hello.
Angela is not in the room. Lisa.
I can do better, Angela. Watch this. Hello. Hello.
And
okay.
Of course, we have Dustin.
Hey.
Did I say Lisa, or were you just doing Angela?
No, you said me, and then I just said, well, I'm going to do Angela. I didn't say hello for me, so hello.
Okay.
Can we get a loop of that where Lisa said she's going to do Angela?
And
Whatever.
of course, the always amazing Dave doing sound.
That's me.
We are in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is February 15th, 2019. Remember that you can contact us about the show at mail@brainstormblog.net. And if you want to support us, then do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. All right, let's go into Rene Rants.
First off, I'd appreciate if we could go the 15th of February.
What did he say?
Sense. He said February 15th.
Why does 15th of February make more sense?
Because he just wants to be Gumby and obstinate.
Like smallest unit of measurement to largest unit of measurement?
One's a word, one's a number.
Just makes more sense.
It doesn't when you're speaking English.
Angela, I did your hello. I did it like this. Hello. That was
Impersonated
awesome.
you.
When you're doing the number format, yes, it
I
makes
did it
sense.
for you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But when you're speaking the words, you use the word February first.
In French, you don't.
No,
You
I
say
don't.
You
le
should know
15
this.
février. You'd say it like that. But it's not French.
Right.
We're speaking.
All right, Rene Rants.
I'm just trying to
I
delay
want to hear
Renee.
what Rene has to say about yellow vests.
So I think we're gonna use the what the fuck bumper for you.
That almost works.
Is that
almost
what
works.
this is going to be?
Yeah, I think so.
Fucking what the fucking fuck? Who the fuck? Fuck this fucking. How did you do fucking fucks? Fuck!
Well, it certainly illustrates the diversity of the word.
And yeah,
Yeah, that kind of works. Because like, I know you guys, and I know last time you guys did the podcast, you had a thing about the yellow vests.
Yeah.
And my reaction to this a little bit more visceral than say, what you did, because you tackle like the philosophical differences between the two.
right.
This is just something that has just annoyed the fuck out of me because on Facebook, because friends have worked in the oil field and from hometown, whatever. They've been posting a lot of this shit, although it's been significantly less since they started booting people off the Facebook for calling for, hanging of the elected prime minister.
Right.
That's just not cool. But anyway, the way thing is, like, there's if this protest was just like supposedly the two main ideas behind the protest, pro-pipeline and anti-carbon tax. Actually, I wouldn't be as against it. I mean, I myself are not anti-pipeline. I agree that it's a better way to transport the oil. I think we need to get it to other markets, but they are problematic. They do leak. Mm-hmm. You can't just, and I don't think that they're the panacea that they're expecting them to be.
Right.
I don't think that if they build these pipelines, suddenly it'll be back to the way it was, 5 years ago, because that was a bubble that popped.
That ain't ever coming back.
No, that was a bubble that popped. I mean, supply and demand, bitches. But this has turned into like an umbrella for every right wing nut job idea out there. I mean, it's become, instead of MAGA hats, it's become yellow vests. Yeah. It has taken this similar tone as the MAGA people down in the States. Although, granted, it's not, instead of the blind loyalty to Trump, it's the blind rage hatred of Trudeau. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that has been kind of popped up, and I grabbed a couple screen captures and sent to you, is this idea of this globalism that they're protesting because of the proposed pact about easing migration.
The UN Migrant Pact or Pact on Refugees or whatever it was.
Yeah, which I look at it kind of cynically as a bunch of guys at the UN going, it'd be great if we do this thing, and they all pat each other in the back. Yeah, we should do this thing. The one thing they're not going to do is the thing. It's like
that's what happens when something's completely non-binding.
Yeah, it was non-binding.
Except Trudeau would be like, yeah, we're doing this thing. Because he would totally do the thing.
Yeah. But
which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
nobody knows what we're talking about.
No. Because from what little I've read about it, all it's supposed to be is an agreement to make it easier to, but it doesn't, UN doesn't get to dictate how many migrants you take in.
Yeah.
It's just supposed to make the transition easier, and it makes it easier to deport as well. But everyone's up in arms over it, and it's just this, like, when did the UN become Cobra? Like, Guild of Calamitous Intent. Right. Like, all these, super villain-esque, things. Like, yes, the UN is a global entity, but they don't dictate.
Yeah.
It's like, what was that? Team America, it's like, well, hello, Hans Briggs. We're going to write a very stern written letter to you. Like, the UN is not as effective as these protesters seems to be making it.
Essentially toothless, right?
Yes. I mean, you look at all the things that have gone throughout the world, and the UN has sent troops there, but they haven't really been able to do much. The Rwandan genocide, the stuff in Darfur, like, the list is long. But
everything in Saudi Arabia ever.
Yeah, I mean, although I don't think UN has got troops in Saudi Arabia at the moment.
No, that's true.
But it's just this idea of that it's become this umbrella for every crackpot right-wing idea. It's just annoyed the hell out of me, especially when it's people I know that are buying into it. And it's like, I was hoping they were a little bit smarter than this.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at their, there was two different manifestos that I found, and they weren't exactly the same. They were similar, but I mean, the one thing that really stuck out was this weird idea about sovereignty, that they keep going on about sovereignty. And I don't think they know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, the one that really stuck out, and I'll see if I can find it here, was, where is it? Regular referendums. This is the one that really bugged me. Was, we the people advocate for our sovereign right above all others to use our 100% veto power to vote via referendums or other means necessary on the major issues and decisions prior to legislations and laws being changed that will affect the quality of life and livelihoods of we the people, that we're able to challenge the past changes to legislation and laws back to 1982, which have been proven not to be in the best interests of we the people.
Isn't that called an election?
Yeah, well, the problem is the reason why 82 seems to be standing out is that's when Pierre Trudeau, repatriated the Canadian Constitution. They're worried about sovereignty. Prior to 82, we couldn't technically in Canada change our own constitution because we were ruled by the BNA Act. And so this idea that they have to have referendums on every major law is like this weird, I don't know, is that libertarian or just crackpot fuck?
It's just crackpot nonsense. These are people who aren't even informed about what any of these things were.
No,
they can't even be informed properly as to who the candidates who are in charge are now, let alone each and every law that's been passed since 1982.
I mean, it's easy to point out where referendum doesn't make sense and it doesn't work. Brexit.
Well, see, this is the problem. This is the tone of what has bothered me about this is I think the election of Trump, Brexit, this all have the same kind of misinformation bullshit attached to it.
Yeah.
You know, because Brexit has happened, but there was, after it happened, everyone was like, oh, what did we vote on again? Because there was so much misinformation about it. You know, Trump gets elected because there was so much misinformation about Hillary and whatever else.
Yeah, if we get to the point where it's a referendum on everything, it's just going to be voting for CTV or NBC.
Oh, it'll be just a total utter clusterfuck.
Yeah, it's going to be voting based on spin. That's all it's going to be.
You know, and like,
people don't have the wherewithal generally to go deeper than the first layer of shit they're fed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you just look at the reaction we had after the last election, right? Not my prime minister. Well, no, that's out west. He didn't win many. The Liberals didn't win any seats, but that's how
they want a seat here.
Well, yes, Goodale was an exception,
and in
Edmonton?
I mean, out in BC, they didn't do too bad.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the West, I mean, Alberta.
Well, I mean, that's the problem is when the West wants in, meaning Alberta wants to dictate. You know, is the way it works. But that's what the tone seems to be with this is that if they don't get exactly what they want, well, they're not listening to the will of the people. You know, and the problem is like I said, I empathize. Like, I mean, it sucks out here. Like, I mean, right now the economy sucks because oil's dried up, right? The money's not floating as much. Everywhere is slow and dead and boring. Yeah. But
things are tough all over.
But the problem is
I would correct that too. The economy doesn't suck because the oil's dried up for money. The economy sucks because we no longer have the artificially inflated benefit of the oil. You can't blame the oil on the economy on the oil. It was just something beneficial for a while that kept us floating.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, the reactionary because there was a bunch of dominoes that happened. Like, I mean, suddenly the provincial government doesn't have as big a coffer. Suddenly they jack the BST on everything and then bitch about the carbon tax. You know, there's a million ironies that we could talk about.
Our economy sucks because of mismanagement.
Bingo. But
yeah,
the thing is, and like this is where this has annoyed the fuck out of me is because I empathize because there's a lot of people that, you know, their livelihoods have been affected by this, but it's a commodity that is cyclical. It goes up and crashes about every 10 years. Different reasonings, but the pattern is about the same. And to think that you can drive a bunch of rigs to Ottawa and change anything, I don't, you know, because the pipeline issue isn't just government. It's because, you know,
it's almost entirely not government at this point, right?
No, I mean, they're blaming Trudeau. He's attacking the oil industry. Well, no, that's why they bought the fucking pipeline. They've got $1 billion, you know, package to try to infuse into it, but they're attacking the oil industry.
Yeah, they're bending over backwards to support the oil industry, but
there's a glut on oil, and it's not fucking worth anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a fucking Ford Focus.
Kind of, yeah.
270,000 kilometers isn't too bad.
I wasn't talking about your car. I was just saying.
All the car analogies.
Yeah. That's all he knows. But like, I mean, this is the thing
that's his reference point.
It just annoys me is that people that are all up in arms, you need to understand. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs because I'm not in the industry, but you need to understand a bit more of your own industry.
Well, and the trouble is that People don't it's not even that they don't understand the industry, it's that they don't understand policy or economics or anything except for work on the rig, pump the oil out of the ground, I'm supposed to get paid.
None of them look past our border, our provincial border. Like, I shouldn't say none. That's really being very dickish.
It's making a bit of a blanket statement, I guess.
But a lot of people, the people that are making these statements about the oil, they aren't looking at the glut coming from the Middle East. The fact that America is now basically not requiring as much of our oil.
That's the thing. Is, I mean, this is the end result of $150 a barrel.
Yeah.
It was $150 a barrel, so we threw everybody, just chucked bodies into the oil patch. Everyone was drilling like crazy. The Americans went fracking crazy. They're supplying themselves, so there's now an oil glut here.
Yeah.
That's why it's because the current pipelines can't handle what they're, so it's just sitting there because the Americans don't need it, so they're not taking it. They don't want the Fort Mac stuff because it's too thick. They have to dilute it to get it through the pipes. And there's also that PR that it's dirty oil and they don't want it. So, I mean, all these factors kick in. And this is the economic reality.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the people in the oil field, they're like, well, if we could just get it to the fucking port, well, where's it going to go?
Well,
who's going to buy it?
That's part of the part I kind of agree with that. You do need those because you do need to get to other markets.
If there's a market.
That is true. But, I mean, we can't – being totally reliant on the Americans as our only customer is kind of silly because, I mean, especially under President Cheeto Dust, who, he gets a mean tweet from Ann Coulter and he totally changes his economic policy. Like you can't trust them. But that's just it is China's economy is slowed down, so they don't need the oil. The only other one is sending it out towards Europe, but do they need it? I don't know. I mean, I don't think the pipeline. I think we do need the pipelines, but they're not going to fix everything.
I think, that's the issue.
They're problematic because they do fucking leak. Some people don't want it running through their land.
Trains derail and burn down towns too, though. So there's
trade-offs. There's trade-offs.
I mean, transporting oil is an issue. It's never going to be perfect, but I think that the myth that a pipeline is going to cure all of Canada's economic ills is something that is really prevalent in Saskatchewan and Alberta now. And
it's not going to change anything.
That's also the thing, and I don't know the numbers per se, but you hear them saying how many billions of dollars we're losing because, the Canadian oil is so depressed or whatever. Once again, it's Alberta bitching about money they're not making.
Yeah, here's the thing. If those oil companies were losing billions of dollars, they would find a way to get their fucking oil to market.
Right.
Yeah.
Billionaire oil companies don't be like, oh, we can't move the oil. I guess we don't make any money. They would find a way to get the oil to market. They would use fucking semi-trucks.
They'll fucking fly it in planes if they have to.
We have all of these planes for putting out forest fires. They can hold lots of oil.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a thing of it annoys me because, like, certain elements of it I agree with. I mean, like I said, I'm not anti-pipeline, but they're problematic. But I don't think it's going to cure all the problems. And when they had their little town hall at the university, pissed me off because lived down by the university, and if I stepped outside, all I could hear was the fucking honk 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 honk, and it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're the same people that would be like, fire all of them if, say SaskTel went on strike, but you guys are on strike basically driving your semis around, and that's fine. Like, the whole thing pisses me off.
You people have thought about, like, pipelines and oil industry a lot of shit. I don't even ever think about this shit. Like, I don't know why. I mean, it's like I'm not affected.
Things like economies and, money are important.
Well,
no, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm like, I don't know why I never think of this shit. I never occur.
You don't
I
have
never.
the same people on Facebook posting shit every 5
seconds. It might be,
seconds.
because I have like astronomers. Oh, actually, the thing I'm going to talk about later, is actually a thing that a friend of mine posted because he's working on that project. So,
cool.
Anyways,
no, that's awesome.
So yeah, that's what I get.
Yeah, like,
and also my aunt posts about the weather a lot. I'm just like, Diane, nobody cares. Yeah. Like, I love my aunt. Like, but I don't care.
Yeah. As opposed to Rene, whose Facebook feed is like,
Renee's got some good shit in there
up to piss him off.
You know what I think?
Yeah,
you know what I think would have made
some good shit in there.
You know what I think would have made these guys even more mad? First off, they hate our carbon tax. Imagine if that carbon tax, if Trudeau said, okay, well, any province that hasn't signed on, you're still paying the carbon tax, but that is going into renewable energy in your province. I think that's what they should have
Isn't
done.
SAS Power moving towards renewable energies? Is that not so?
They're moving towards whatever is going to be cheaper for power for them.
Yeah.
But
Which will be renewable.
Which turns out not to be a thing that's not renewable.
And they just announced a big project for Estevan for geothermal, which I think is good.
Yep.
See, I know some things about energy things that people talk to me about shit, and I kind of half listen.
And then we have our premier fucking suing the federal government, saying you can't impose.
He's not standing up for me.
Fucking head.
He says he's standing up for Saskatchewan, but I really don't think that he is.
Nope.
What I really don't like about him is that he can't smile, and then all the billboards of him, he's just squinting at the sun because that's the closest they can get to. He's kind of grimacing and squinting at the sun, and that's the closest they can get to a smile. And I mean, it's an approach.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to smile when you have Brad Wall's
a rod up your ass.
Well, I was thinking Brad Wall's hand up there. But.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
That's right.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, how do you feel about your rant there, Rene?
Not quite coherent enough, but good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, this is stuff I gotta start thinking about because you guys know a lot more about this shit than I do.
I work with guys who are like right into this yellow vest convoy bullshit.
What I don't get is how they can think that the prime minister and his cabinet can't pass a tax federally.
Yeah.
Well, no, but that's the catch-22, right? There is that argument out there, and I've heard it, is that they think it's totally within the government's power to they should be able to just plow that pipeline right through. That's their power. But a federal tax isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
One you like, one you don't.
That's the huge hypocrisy of this.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, I understand that it's your livelihood. I get that.
Right.
It's no different than your American gun nuts. My government guarantees that I can have a gun so I can fight my government.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of
Rene, you just need to learn to like make better use of the unfollow button.
That's right.
Just saying.
Or sometimes
there's
just
other
the
websites
unfriend button. Like seriously.
Or even unfriend.
Some of these people.
See, that's the problem. Is I'm
go
okay
to foxnews.com. It'd probably be less painful.
Sometimes it's good.
The thing is I'm not one for that. I should be able to have friends that I don't, you know what? Fuck you. I don't agree with you on this. And that should be fine.
Yeah.
But
that doesn't work with Cory, though, because you do that to Cory and you'll get a fucking 42-page essay. Or you won't get it in one segment, though. It'll be in like 32 different fucking replies to your post.
Yeah. That's
that
what the
you never even look at
for.
until like 2 months later.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the only thing I ever comment on that Cory's posted is actually when he's replying to somebody else and it shows up in my feed.
Yeah.
And then I got to scroll through to find it.
I haven't engaged with anyone over this because I knew it's just pointless.
There's no reason.
It's a waste of time, but it's just something that like I said, there's elements of it I can understand, but I think it's crossed that tipping point into just fucking stupidity.
We should start our own purple vest movement or something.
The yellow vest was supposed to be ours. It was supposed to be a left-wing movement.
I know. So
how about a purple belt? Like something nicer than a vest. Purple belt. Purple high heels. I want high heels.
I don't know how to walk in high heels.
If you get really comfortable ones, it'll be okay. Oh, yeah. Purple cotton candy.
Purple
All right,
stuffed cookie.
let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's take on some science with Lisa.
Me?
Yeah.
Is there a science thing?
If you base medicine on science, you cure people. If you base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works. Bitches.
Yes, science!
Science does kill people.
It does.
Time we
It
can.
does kill people.
Every time.
Well, not science itself, the application.
I'm sorry, I don't like Richard Dawkins. Like, I like.
No, that's fair.
That's okay.
I like
don't
some
like
of his
him either.
books,
Yeah.
but something about him.
I don't think very many people do.
I don't like him. He's bad.
Polarizing.
Just stop killing people. I don't. It's just weird. Anyways, okay. So, how do I preface it? So, my friend Alex Parker works on the New Horizon project. So, if you don't remember,
That Alex Parker.
yeah, AHPO. Anyways, I don't remember what the H stands for. You and I went to grad school together. Anyways, so he works on the New Horizons Project. So if you don't remember, it's this movement of people wearing yellow vests. No, I'm kidding. It's it's a space probe that they sent to Pluto to take pictures of Pluto. And that was a few years ago. So you remember all those pretty pictures of Pluto came out? That was from New Horizon probe. So then they specifically designed New Horizon to have extra fuel and have extra life, much like, what was the Mars thing?
The rover?
What was it when it was called?
Opportunity?
Much like Opportunity, the Mars rover, but to have an extended life, and they gave it extra fuel so they could see something else. Okay, so how do I start this? I guess I'll just start with what they discovered, and then maybe I found a really good article in Space about it, so I'm going to kind of summarize it. So they found an object called 2014 MU69. I thought you guys would enjoy the 69 name of this, just because that's how we roll. Okay, so what it looks like, if you take a picture. Okay, so sorry, I should maybe back up here. So this is an object in the Kuiper belt. So Pluto is a Kuiper belt object, and this object MU69 is also a Kuiper belt object. The Kuiper belt is a ring, I guess, of icy snowballs way out in the far reaches of the solar system. Pluto is a well-known Kuiper belt object. It's not a planet; it's a Kuiper belt object, and we went to visit it. Anyways, so
potatoes.
They do look like potatoes.
Yeah, but it's not a they. Okay, this is one object.
Oh.
It looks like, so just to describe for our listeners, it looks like two dirty snowballs, or kind of two, I guess, asteroids, I guess. It looks like a snowman, right? It looks like one's a little bit bigger than the other, and it's just kind of these ball-ish shapes that are just sort of gently stuck together. That's what it looks like if you go and look for a picture of it. We never actually been able to see something like this before, to actually take a picture of it. The only reason we have these high-resolution pictures of the damn thing is because we flew within like a few thousand kilometers of it. So it's super, super cool. Okay, so what's really cool is that we've never had a spacecraft sent to see something so far away. It is by far the farthest thing away that we've ever seen. It's 1.6 billion kilometers farther than Pluto.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And another thing really cool about it is it's the first object we've ever sent something to that we didn't know that we're going to see that particular object when we launched it. So this thing wasn't discovered until 2014. New Horizon was launched in 2006.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't know. Okay. So that's really, really cool. So I talked about Kuiper belt objects, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the important thing about Kuiper belt objects is that they're sort of the remnants left from forming our solar system. So scientists study them in order to understand how our solar system formed, what it would have looked like in the early days. So back in the early days, it wouldn't have been made up of big planets. It would have been made up of little tiny small things, such as the objects in the Kuiper belt. So those are the remnants of when our planetary system formed, which means it's really important for us to learn how it forms. So this object, MU69, also goes by the name Ultima Thule, which apparently even the naming of that was controversial. I'll get to that later, but because it's farther down in my article, I'd rather just get to that when I get to it, so I don't lose the scroll. But we'll get back to that. But yeah, Ultima Thule is the same thing as MU69. So in 2003, astronomers all kind of got together and made some bunch of recommendations called the decadal survey. So what they did is they made a bunch of they kind of set a course for astronomy. We want to be looking at this over the next decade, and this was actually used well beyond a decade to kind of decide what astronomy would be looking at. And one thing that they highly recommended is that New Horizons should fly back by other Kuiper Belt objects, not just Pluto. Okay. So they're like, well, what the fuck are we going to look at? We don't have anything for it to look at. It's got to be near enough to Pluto. The Kuiper Belt is enormous. You can think about as you go farther and farther out, this Kuiper Belt goes around the entire solar system, but that's a much, much farther distance the farther out you go, right? We're talking like if the distance from the Earth to the Sun is 1 astronomical unit, I believe Pluto is somewhere around just under 50 astronomical units. So whatever it is, 43 or whatever. So, I mean, we're way, way, way farther out there. Okay, so it's got to be something that we can get to and blah, 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 blah. So they started looking for something. In 2014, the Hubble Space Telescope located 5 potential objects, including Ultima Thule or MU-69. And basically through a series of observations on the ground and in other places, they decided that this would be the best possible object. So they decided, okay, this thing will actually save us the most fuel, and it's an interesting object. We're going to send New Horizon there. So like I said, they decided where to send it after the damn thing was like pretty much, 2/3 of the way to where its destination, which is pretty crazy. So in 2017, the New Horizon team requested suggestions from the public for a nickname for MU-69. The final decision, Ultima Thule, is a term used in medieval times that means, quote, beyond the known world. The nickname was submitted by about 40 different people. But the nickname spurred controversy because of its historical use by Nazi forerunners and modern use by extremist groups. However, the New Horizons team decided to stick with the nickname despite the potential negative connotation. I've said it a number of times. I think, the lead scientist on the study said that Ultima Thule is very old, many centuries old, like the term is, possibly over 1,000 years old, and it's a wonderful meme for exploration. That's why we chose it. I would say that just because some bad guys once liked the term, we're not going to let them hijack it. So they chose that name. So before the flyby, they used several telescopes on Earth to kind of try to get an idea of where the damn thing was and what to expect when they get there, when it got there. So astronomers typically study Kuiper Belt objects by looking at occultation of stars. So there's lots of stars in the background, and what you do is you look for these Kuiper Belt objects to pass in front of a star, and then you figure out something about the object. So you can figure out kind of how big it is, or where it is, or its orbit, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So they use that to predict, and they actually could only look at very, very specific, like they had to, I can't even remember the names of it. They went to the countries of, I don't even remember. They went to like random countries in Africa, like the only place they could freaking see it. And like they had to like very carefully map out exactly where they expected it to be so they could send the probe there.
Right.
Yeah. So apparently the probe actually did its flyby of Ultima Thule at midnight Eastern time on January 1st, 2019. So it just happened. This is an observation that's a month old. And before this, we never ever saw something like a smaller Kuiper Belt object in this detail ever. Like this is really, really new and really, really cool.
That's awesome.
So it did its flyby, and I really encourage our listeners to go look at pictures, because people like my friend Alex Parker took the images, and we've only gotten back like a few percentage of the data. Actually, we're waiting. It's streaming, and it's going to take years for the data from New Horizons to all kind of get to us.
Yeah.
So we're kind of slow. It's like a. You remember the modems back in the 90s, and a picture kind of came in really, really slowly. So, I mean, it's kind of like data's kind of like that. We have a full picture, but yeah, but they're doing color analysis and all sorts of other great things. And people like Alex are doing a deconvolution of the images to kind of make them really sharp and see what's going on. It's really cool stuff that they're doing.
Ultima Thule is way better of a name than Asteroid McAsteroid Face.
I don't think so, actually.
Says you.
I don't think so. And apparently, so there's two parts. So if you look at, like I said, it kind of looks like a snowman. I think they've named the bigger part Ultima and the smaller part Thule.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, this is the most amazing thing ever. On January 1st, 2019, 12:33 a.m., New Horizons made its historic flyby of MU-69, Ultima Thule. Team scientists and engineers gathered at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland to ring in the new year and cheer for the moment the spacecraft's buzz the KBO. Kuiper Belt object. This is the best part. Brian May, a mission scientist and lead guitarist for the band Queen, released a new single commemorating the event because he's actually got a PhD in astrophysics.
Nice.
It's just so cool. Anyway, so he's involved. But they didn't actually know if they had a successful flyby until 10 hours later when the data came in, because it takes that long for it to reach the Earth. So they did do a successful flyby. They have lots of really cool pictures. One of the most interesting things is they didn't really know, they actually didn't know if it was actually going to be two separate objects, like kind of orbiting each other very closely. But no, what they think this is a contact binary, which they've never seen before. We don't know, they were kind of theorized, but never knew it actually existed. So it's theorized, and apparently now it's true, that especially in the early solar system, small objects would kind of orbit each other slowly, and then they just kind of touch, and then so they're just kind of touching, and they're one object now, and they're gravitationally bound to each other, and they continue. But like the lead scientist in the article points out, if your car were to impact something with a speed, like, you wouldn't even be a fender bender, right? Like they just sort of gently touched, and which means like they don't get destroyed. They don't bash into each other, make something else. They're just sort of. So this is like an example of like a super old type of object that we would have seen early in the solar system. So it's very, very cool. Yeah. I think maybe I've kind of pumped it up a lot, but that's basically it. But yeah, we still have the data.
That's really cool, though.
We still have the data coming in. There's going to be they're literally going to be analyzing it for years.
Right.
And it's just super, super, super cool.
It is.
And are they yes. So specifically that object they're studying, are they going to change their focus to other stuff?
Well, or they have enough fuel to do another object.
Okay.
And they designed the probe to have enough lifetime, so they're going to choose another one. And maybe years before they get to it, but they're going to choose another Kuiper Belt object and go there too.
Seems a little wild that they spent all that time setting up where the exact spot they needed to aim it at, and then exactly. It could have missed.
It could have, but it didn't. They did. Yeah, you never know. I guess. Of course, you never know, right? Crazy. Until you try something, you never know. I mean, it's freaking 50 astronomical units away. I mean, 10 hours to communicate the damn thing, and then 10 hours back. So, yeah, who knows? But it's just so cool. And so but certainly models of how this planet, how the solar system forms, how planets form, will certainly be informed by this discovery for years and years and years to come. Like just a wealth of, there'll be like dozens of PhDs coming out of this data and useless things that nobody can get jobs with. But yeah, it'll be amazing.
That's awesome.
Useless things that nobody can get jobs with.
Just as we were talking interesting about that.
More interesting than freaking pipelines. to me. So this is what shows up in because I saw this before the press release, right? My friend just posted the picture because he just finished processing it on his computer.
Oh, neat.
The same thing happened with Pluto images years ago. Like he was like, oh, I made this, check out what Pluto looks like. And like, oh, cool, Alex, thanks. And then it would be in a press release the next day. So
I get funny CAD videos in my feed. I
get those too.
I get corgi videos. Corgi videos.
I hate corgis.
Fucking love them.
They're so yappy and needy.
I didn't mean it about the pipeline.
All right.
Well, I guess that's it for another show.
No.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Dustin.
Bye, Dustin. Bye, Rene. We still have lots of show to do.
I'm sorry that the KBOs drove you away. Oh, also, planetary nerds are so funny because they'd always, like, in meetings, they'd always bring Timbits and be like, hey, guys, I brought some KBOs, like Kuiper Belt objects. That's how fucking amazing scientists are. That's how hilarious. Thank you.
The rest of your thing was really
quit while you were ahead.
The rest of your stuff was really good.
And the Americans have no idea what Timbits are.
No, that's true.
They're like the donut holes. They're donut holes.
Kid bits?
What? Yeah. Kid bits.
Kid bits. Bits of children.
All right. Well, after science, let's go with That's What She Said.
And in the future, if I want to say something funny or witty or do an impression, I will no longer ever do any of those things.
Does that include That's What She Said?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow, that is really hard. You really think you can go all day long? Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
That's my joke. Damn it, Dwight.
I watched that That's What She Said video a number of times.
It's fucking hilarious.
Funnier every time.
I think I'm on the 5th rotation of The Office.
Oh, geez. Nice.
I just can't do it.
It's okay. I won't judge you too harshly. I promise I won't.
Whatever. I'm not worried about being judged by people that watch The Office 5 times.
It's not for everybody.
No.
There are people with a sense of humor, and then there's you.
Yep.
I like when you come because then Cory burns and he's normally so nice to everyone, but he's not nice to you, and I like that.
He's never been nice.
No, he's nice to everyone else. You just don't notice because he's mean to you.
See? I am a nice person. I was going to say good person, but
came out as guy person.
Yeah. That's not necessarily true, so I stuttered.
We could make a new word.
Anyway, this is Angela's.
It's my segment. It's my segment, you guys.
Do it.
So last podcast, I was remotely connected, and I didn't get to. I had a lot of thoughts about our interview with James Fell. It was really interesting. He's very articulate and entertaining and a lot of fun. And I was really glad that we could finally have him on the podcast. I think for me, I got far too excited about it.
Why didn't you marry him, Angela?
He's already married. And so am I.
I was going to say, so are you. I like how that wasn't your first answer.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been your second reason.
Oh.
I find that being the second reason to be totally reasonable.
I don't know. He's kind of amazing, and
if he wasn't already married, Angela could arrange to not be married.
Like I have the electronic version of his book. I bought the hardcover and then I got the audiobook so that I could listen to it at work while I was
Is it
working.
him?
Oh yeah. Oh. It's fantastic. It's better than reading it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say better than something
in any format, because it's like you're having a conversation with somebody that's cool and isn't an asshole. Like, but and then there's classic rock quotes in there and stuff like that.
Nice.
I don't understand the cool but not an asshole bit, but
it's possible.
I don't get it.
You can reach for the stars. You can be cool and not be an asshole.
There's a few.
So, yeah.
Some people do it.
But the thing that I wanted to bring up from that was recently there was a video that surfaced with Ellen Page on Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see it.
Why
didn't I read the notes?
You should really,
so stupid.
I didn't put this in the notes.
Okay, good.
This is completely like I
it.
thought of it before I left today.
Tell me about it.
Because it kind of, the reason I referenced the Holy Shit Moment book was James Fell talks about how his wife, like in the and even when we talked to him, he talked about how his wife was constantly being interrupted and constantly being dismissed, and he noticed it. She didn't so much notice it. He noticed it.
Right.
And that's something that piqued my interest because my husband has repeatedly said that he notices that I get interrupted a lot in my family when there's functions that happen. And I didn't realize it until Trent said something. And then now that I know, I notice and it pisses me off. And there was that one time when we were at a couple iterations of studios ago, but Destin was like being Destin.
I was being super
I remember that day was so beautiful.
But
relive it for us. Just explain it to the listeners.
Yeah,
do it again.
It was awesome.
There was one. I apologized to you, and then you said, you just apologized to me because I interrupted you. And it kind of stuck with me. It was like, yeah, you did fucking interrupt me. And then later on, I did yell at you and said,
That's right.
Don't fucking interrupt me.
Oh, it was so amazing. It was great. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was
so great.
It was so fucking funny.
And it was like you were not going to fuck with her with her tone like that. You were just like, oh fuck.
I brought out the big guns. And to that point, like that's something that I really have been thinking about lately a lot, and thinking because I've been doing a lot of listening, haven't been doing a lot of talking, and I have a lot of pent up stuff to say, and it's frustrating to be a woman and to feel like I'm being interrupted sometimes, and to feel like people just don't listen to the things that I have to say. And I think sometimes we stick to superficial things because we don't feel like we have a lot of time to say stuff. And the thing that I loved about Ellen Page on Stephen Colbert was he gave her the space to say what she needed to say. He didn't interrupt her. And like someone tweeted, he held the silence for her. And he let those pauses remain. And that, I think, escalated the intensity of what she was saying and her message and the frustration that she felt about marginalized people. And that was amazing to me. That was something that I just loved. And then further to that, this week, what's Jody Wilson-Raybould, our federal not Attorney General.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Lieutenant Governor.
She was a member of the Liberal caucus.
Yeah.
And she was demoted from her post. And in the most recent shuffle of the cabinet. And then some stuff has come out about SNC-Lavalin and their less than above board practices and how they've lobbied the government super hard about messing with the prosecution laws. And she has been in a position where she's been privy to those things. And the suggestion was that she was advised by the Prime Minister to do something about that particular issue. And then she offered her resignation.
She was the Justice Minister.
She was the Justice Minister.
I looked it up. I didn't
demoted to
Veterans Affairs.
Yes, that's right.
So
you want me to read this? Sorry.
It's. I mean, the point I wanted to make about that, I just wanted to the thing that I love about that situation. Her letter of resignation was posted, and then Justin Trudeau, as Mark Critch put it, stood in front of buses to throw somebody under the bus. In that he was he always called her by her first name, Jody. Like, you know, they were best friends, and he was completely blindsided by it. And the thing that I love the most is that she's not saying a fucking thing. She's basically saying, I'm talking to my lawyer about what to do next.
Right.
She's still present on social media. She's thanking her uncle and her dad for coming out in support of her.
Yeah.
But she's not saying a fucking thing. And I think, honestly, that is driving Justin Trudeau crazy right now. Because she's not giving him the time of day. She's walking away, and I think that drives him fucking nuts.
His reaction to this has been very much like, oh, well, she never said that she was unhappy with the new appointment, and la la la.
Well, and he has since said, I haven't. Well, if so and so didn't quit this, then I wouldn't have changed her position. Well, okay, it's a pretty clear change in position, and it's just he's grabbing at straws, and I think that his position and his behavior now is quite telling to me. I
listened to a show about this subject not that long ago, actually. They mentioned that this is the kind of thing that outrages even his allies or people who aren't critical of him very much because of this very hypocritical type stance almost.
Well, and I think we know that he's a bit of a showman. He's aware of how he's perceived and just the way that his brand is put forth. He's very aware of that. And I think this particular thing, she's not having any of it. And I appreciate her attitude right now. It's very cool. So, I mean, those were the things that I wanted to bring up today. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and the one that I was thinking of was the Broken Hearts podcast. It's about two white women who adopt 6 black children. And it's Hearts, Harts. And it's a collaboration by iHeartRadio and Glamour magazine, of all things.
Okay.
Weird.
And it's 2 female white journalists who are... I'm going to lose my voice because I've been talking too much. But it's a fascinating story because it goes into great detail to the background of these women, and it goes into the background of these children, and the themes of the white women and the white saviorism that kind of weaves through that, and the way that the foster care and adoption system works there, and the perception of these kids being saved by these women. It ended up that these people died.
Mm.
That's kind of like the main part of the story, but they go into detail. Like they do a lot of interviews of like their neighbors and what happened beforehand and stuff like that. And it's just a really interesting story. It's kind of depressing, but at the same time, it's really fascinating to think about what motivated these women. Either like, was it an abusive relationship? How much did they reveal to their coworkers and neighbors? And were these kids really developmentally disabled, or were they just really not well looked after? So, and did they really need to be adopted across the country away from their family? Because they were living with their grandma. And the reason they got taken from their grandma's house was because their mother, who they'd been originally taken from, she was convicted of a crime, and she went, and like they had been taken from her, and then she ended up looking after the kids when they'd been living with their grandma.
Oh, okay.
And that was what instigated the removal of the kids. And it's a broken system, but it's just an incredibly fascinating podcast to listen to. And also Surviving Y2K, if you ever listened to the Finding Richard Simmons podcast.
I did not.
I did.
So good.
It was good.
Same guy. He did one called Surviving Y2K. And he interviews a bunch of people that were like doing the prepping, and he actually interviews a guy by the name of Blah 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 who ran for mayor in Regina a few years back.
Nice.
And it's really funny and interesting. And yeah,
is that Blah 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 for mayor?
Yeah.
With the car?
I think so.
It's got for mayor on the back of his car?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that was the guy.
Yeah.
That was the guy. Yeah. And last but not least, the Stuff Mom Never Told You podcast. I've really enjoyed that too, because it's all stuff with a feminist.
That rings a bell for some reason.
Yeah, it's howstuffworks.com.
Okay.
I want to double back to when you were talking about being interrupted. I want to interrupt you.
Yeah. Fine, I'm done.
It's great because we have our son's autistic, and we always tell him not to interrupt when he's interrupting, and he does it to us.
Yeah.
And it's ingrained. Now, he doesn't have any of the social barriers that the rest of us have.
Yeah.
If you're in public and you're talking and somebody interrupts you, he'll just look at him and say, "Don't interrupt, that's rude." It's awesome.
I love that. I love that so much.
Kids are the worst though, right? Because like you tell them not to like do something and then you do it and they tell you and you're like, fuck. Like, you know? Like, shit.
Yeah.
No, I think it's cool that Loki holds us to the same standards that we hold him to.
Oh, no, it's good.
I don't know what your fucking problem is.
No, yeah.
Being held to the same standards. But
I don't want to be held to the same standards. No, Mummy can say fuck off as much as Mummy wants.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you have something else.
That's pretty much
all right.
The thrust of what I wanted to say.
It's funny because this is the first time I've been back in a long time. So, and I know that I was overreaching when I was talking a few times, and I was like, "Oh, I hope Angela doesn't yell at me."
You've established fear.
I've set a precedent. Oh, fuck.
Nice. All right. So now it's Dave's turn.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about, Dave?
Well, I wasn't going to.
Justice is about making sure that being polite is not the same thing as being quiet. In fact, oftentimes the most righteous thing you can do is shake.
Break the computer.
The audio
shake.
Stop.
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Shake it off.
She says the table.
Oh, shake it off. Yeah.
That's okay. We
stay up too late.
Shake your foundation.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
This hard drive is barely keeping up with what I do anymore. But anyway, yeah. So I guess I'm the social justice person now. I've been pigeonholed into that.
Well, good because we've never had somebody into social justice on this show.
Never
involved in any way.
True. Negative.
So yeah, this is my social justice segment. So for my article for today, as you all know, we're in a state of emergency in the States right now, and we're not there, but we're close enough. We're affected by things. Anyways, so yeah, I have an article here from PBS NewsHour, and I mean, this seems very self-evident, and I know it's been in the media a lot, but I think it's worth going over again because who knows who's going to listen and it's worth talking about. So this was an AP fact check about Trump playing on immigration myths, and I mean, it's no secret that lately there's been a recent rash of xenophobia in North America in general, in a lot of places, actually, a lot of the developed world. Specifically the States, though, obviously. Even in Canada here, when we talked about the LFS movement, there's some xenophobic things tied into that as well. And for those of you who don't know what xenophobia means,
it's when people hate Xena Warrior Princess.
That's exactly it. No, yes. It's an irrational fear of immigrants and people from other countries. And things like that. So
I thought it was people that didn't like xenomorphs.
Yeah, xenomorphs. Yeah,
xenomorphs are bad. I can see why people don't like them. But
So I think the big thing here is, okay, so how I want to start this off is yes, there are immigration problems. I know there are. We have them here. We have them in. I mean, the Mexican border has some issues. It's true. That's fine. But the solution being proposed just doesn't really make any logical sense in reality. I know Trump just likes to say again and again, walls work, walls work, walls work, walls work. If you didn't have walls, what would you do? You know, like on and on and on, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, people keep telling him, and reporters, like, right to his face over and over again, keep bringing up stats, and he just goes, oh, where'd you get those stats? Well, I have these stats. I have lots of stats. And
I got the best stats.
Well, today he said something like that was just so bizarre. It was just like somebody brought up, like a really good question. It wasn't like they were attacking him. They were just saying, hey, this. And he's like, oh, well, you know, where do you know where you're getting your stats from? But my Homeland Security Department tells me this. And, and they're like, oh, we got this from your government. These are all the stats that your departments are releasing. But anyways, so this article kind of goes through some of those myths. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I guess the bottom line is here is you know, right now they say the problem, the state of emergency is because all these immigrants are flooding the border. There's caravans coming. Basically, they're invading the country and murdering people and taking everybody's jobs and screwing up the economy. And it just sounds very similar to what they said about Jewish people.
They're disease-ridden people coming in to sponge and take all the jobs.
Yes, right? Like there's something about that's just terribly has a terrible historical context.
Yep.
Because they obviously are going to sponge and take all the jobs at the same time.
Yeah, right. So
Schrodinger's.
So this goes through all these myths. One of the first ones is that vast numbers of immigrants are pouring across U.S. borders. Well, they said not really. The net flow of all migration into the United States in recent years is around 0.3% of the total population. That's a pretty small number.
Yeah.
It's roughly at a long-standing historical average. So there you go. It's average. According to analysis of government data by Lyman Stone, an economist who studies demographic issues. So yes, they actually cite their sources in this article, and that's important because Trump is not citing any of his sources and just bringing up random bullshit. And and today one of the things he did that really pissed me off is he had those the angel mothers or whatever, people who were murdered by illegal immigrants. He had them there and exploiting them, like having them there. Oh, these people are amazing people, and they lost people. They're amazing. Like, it's just like, fuck you, man. Like, you don't really give a shit. This is you using that to your advantage to try to push your campaign promise and all this. And not once is there any talk about Mexico paying for it anymore. That's all gone. So, the other myth we have is immigrants are taking away jobs, which is not true. Many people have firsthand stories of losing a construction bid or an office job to a foreign worker. This happens in an economy as large and diverse as the United States, where numerous people also lose jobs to native-born Americans. But employment data suggests that the influx of immigrants helps increase overall hiring for the U.S. economy rather than erode job growth. Mm-hmm. The trend is clear in the government's monthly jobs reports. So the government has data. The data doesn't distinguish between immigrants who are in the U.S. legally and illegally. Nearly 64% of immigrants hold jobs, compared with roughly 60% of workers born in the States. That's a great number. Last year, immigrants accounted for roughly 40% of the 2.4 million jobs added. So it's just...
Wait, are you saying if there's more people that's an influx to the economy and it creates more jobs because there's more people?
More people to do more jobs.
Correct. That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right. No, not at all.
Did you double check the math?
You can ask the government and their stats. But,
government man said it's good? Okay.
Government said it's good. No, their monthly jobs report says a lot of this stuff. So immigrants are uneducated, not true. In fact, there's a lot more educated immigrants coming than uneducated. I think of what they say here. The country has increasingly become a magnet for foreigners with doctorates and master's degrees. 16% of all immigrants, sorry, not more, but 16% of them arrived since 2000 hold an advanced degree, compared with 13% of the native-born population. So yes, more of them are educated in advanced degrees than the local population. Immigrants are to blame for today's sluggish wage growth. The weight of the research suggests that immigrants have not suppressed wages. David Card, an economist at the University of California, Berkeley, first studied the issue in 1990 by reviewing the arrival of Cuban migrants in Miami during the 1980 Mariel boat lift. So this historical rush of immigrants created a natural experiment to measure what then happened to incomes in the local area. He concluded the influx appears to have had virtually no effect on the wages or unemployment rates of less skilled workers. You know what has a real effect on wages?
What?
Capitalism. I'm sorry, it just does. Just the way things,
the profit motive.
Yes, the profit motives of companies is what creates lower wages. I'm sorry, it's just the reality of it. What else we got here? Immigrants are a drain on taxpayers, which is another bullshit thing. An immigrant and a native-born person with similar characteristics will likely have the same fiscal impact, is what the report says. So, illegal immigration leads to violent crime. No. Trump frequently highlights violence by the savage MS-13 gang, saying in his speech Tuesday that it operates in at least 20 states, and they almost all come through our southern border. So they're predominantly from El Salvador or are U.S. citizens descended from there. But there is scant evidence that immigrants are perpetuating a crime wave. In a paper published last year, sociologists Michael Light and Ty Miller reviewed crime in every state in the District of Columbia from 1990 to 2014. They found that a rising number of immigrants in the country illegally corresponded with a drop, not a rise, in reported crime. So on and on and on. So yes, social science is important. Statistics are important.
Yeah.
You know what? You want to address the border wall, and there was a border issues, border security. There was a bipartisan deal being worked on, and they thought he was going to sign it right back in, I think it was December.
Yeah,
and then he's like, nope, shut down the government. So, I mean, like, there was ways for them to work together to try to have realistic solutions. They were even going to fund, certain agencies more, and I might not agree with their approach 100%, but I think it was at least based in reality, like targeting areas that needed it rather than a wall. Like a wall is just such a fucking metaphorical, talking point. It's all about politics. It's not about.
Yeah.
There's nothing effective about it. Like, let's just be honest. We're not going to build this giant barrier across the border. And I know they say certain sections of it, and that's going to somehow stop immigration when all these, or illegal immigration, when all these, pretty much all these reports suggest it's happening at ports of entries anyway. So I mean, anyway, we could go on about that forever. It's all self-evident at this point. It's been in the media forever. But today's a very important day because today he officially declared a state of emergency to build that wall. And we have our own movements here in Canada, thankfully that aren't as strong yet, but are there. And, they want to do similar things, So, there was actually this meme on here from one of the Yellow Vest protesters saying something like, they had a sign that says white women are meant to have white babies.
Oh, yeah.
So then there's a guy behind him, like with the same sign, but then they have like SpongeBob, like going like derp, like on the same side. Like there's like a brown guy behind him doing the same thing. It's hilarious. So yes, we have people here who are being just as xenophobic and would like us to get tougher on immigration and all this bullshit. But I still have some faith in Canada in its urban centers. I feel like we're not typically like that in urban centers. As much, anyway.
Not yet, anyway.
But I don't know. Different vibe when you go to Toronto than when you're like here, right? Or Vancouver, places like that.
Yeah. Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
I really like the podcast Revisionist History. I'm always recommending other podcasts. Sorry.
Good podcast.
Revisionist History. So it's season 3, episode 5, General Chapman's Last Stand. Mm-hmm. Malcolm Gladwell always spins this really interesting, but he talks about something called the Mexican Migration Project, which is a social science study of how Mexicans have migrated in and out of the United States over decades. And I haven't listened to the podcast in a while, but from what I recall, there was basically General Chapman was kind of put in charge, very effective military general, I don't know what branch of the army or the military, who was given the task of making a less porous border with Mexico, I think in the 80s. It's because until that point, people would kind of easily just kind of cross the river and just like go in between. It wasn't a big deal. And so what they found is the migration pattern changed from people from Mexico coming to the United States to work, contributing to the economy, doing stuff, and then going home off season. Right. To then, when they made it much more difficult for that to happen, people would come to the United States and then they wouldn't leave because the risk of having to come back across the border was too great. So then they'd stay. And so that you had a real shift in like that. So actually having a less porous border actually made the problem. Right. And he interviews these researchers. It's very, very interesting, and I recommend that podcast.
Super funny, actually.
Yeah, like it's always, they're pretty short. They're like half an hour long. I highly recommend that whole series, but that one is in particular very good. It's called General Chapman's Last Stand.
Cool. That's all I got.
That's all you got.
Fuck Trump.
Fuck Trump.
End of.
Not literally.
Yeah.
Well,
gross
enough, I guess.
No.
No, just kidding.
No. There's no amount.
There's no amount. No, there definitely isn't, right?
Not for me. I don't know about you.
Stormy Daniels thought there was, but.
Yeah.
Anyways.
This is off topic, but people say, hey, Lisa, you should sell your knitting stuff because, that's a good idea. And I'm like, well, no, because you'd have to pay me like pennies per hour nobody would pay, $1,000 for a sweater, which is what, you'd have to pay me minimum wage in order to get a sweater done. So there's a saying among knitters that, if I, that knitting is like sex. If I like you and you appreciate it, it's free. Otherwise, you can't pay me enough. And this is also true with Donald Trump. Just saying.
Same goes for crocheting.
Yeah.
Well,
and other crafty shit.
With any luck, we've only got, 2 years left to him?
Unless he gets reelected.
But it's already been 1,000,000 years since he was first elected.
It feels like a million years. I have a feeling this wall battle is not going to go well for him, but anyway.
And the Mueller investigation.
That'll happen soon.
That's the thing. There's a podcast,
They're
speaking
already-
of recommending podcasts, called Mueller, She Wrote.
Yeah.
Really?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Is it good?
It's a bunch of funny ladies.
Mueller, She
Basically,
Wrote.
it's really the Stuff Mom Never Told You podcast had one of the hosts of that podcast on the show, and it was really well done.
I can't get enough Mueller shit. I go to Stay Tuned with Preet for my Mueller shit, but I love
Angela
Mueller shit.
Lansbury was always on my bucket list.
People to do, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's just your list.
Smart and hot.
Yeah.
Well, dead now, but
Is she?
I think so.
Oh, fuck.
Are you sure?
If not, then I still got a shot. If she can't run away, she's got to be like 95.
You don't have a shot.
Yes.
Well, anyways.
Instead of talking about Destin raping seniors, let's move on with this.
No, wait. It was the Getting Curious podcast that she was on, not the Stuff Mom Never Told You podcast. That is Jonathan Van Ness of Queer Eye.
Okay.
He's fucking delightful.
I'm sure he is.
If you ever they're very short, like 40-minute podcasts, and he puts rather intimidating issues into small, palatable portions, chunks.
Chunks.
And he's fucking delightful.
All right. Let's switch up to my
I'm
segment.
not recommending any podcasts that aren't ours.
That's fine.
There's this great podcast called Brainstorm.
Yeah,
There's an episode
that's right.
a long time ago where we talked. No, just kidding. Here we go.
All right.
I told fucking Destin not to fucking interrupt me.
Yeah, that was a good one, actually.
There was an episode 4 weeks ago. We were like, "Oh, this is the last time in the studio. This is really sad."
Yeah, it was really sad.
Aw.
And
4 weeks later,
I actually asked where the studio was
And he didn't know.
today.
you've been here.
with Aquaman?
What's the deal with decaf?
What's the deal with lampshade? What's the deal with...
What's the deal with fascism?
Ooh.
Yeah. So I wrote quite a bit on this, but so fascism is a far-right ideology rooted in authoritarianism and nationalism. And I feel the need to emphasize that a second time. Fascism is a far-right ideology. It is not, nor can it ever be, a left-wing ideology. Anyone who claims that the left are the real fascists are lying or do not know what fascism is. Fascism also sometimes has racially based prejudices as well, and often promotes a sense of superiority among those who fit into some set of prescribed norms. Generally, white, heterosexual, male, and Christian.
Merca.
There are other ideologies that mirror similar ideas of superiority for different groups, but at this time, those are not considered the mainstream for fascism.
Nazism.
I'm not really into etymology, but I think it's interesting to note that the word fascist is connected to or derived from the word fasces, which is a bundle of rods. And fascists will often use the symbol of a bundle of rods around an axe, or a fascio litorio, which is supposed to symbolize strength through unity, as if to say a single rod is easily broken while the bundle is difficult to break.
What if you just unite all the rods into one big strong rod?
You could make it even a further connection to like a bunch of cocks.
What if you just combine them into one big strong rod?
Okay, you can put the rods into the Kuiper belt and hope that they gravitationally bind together in a soft contact binary or multi-ary, and then send a really expensive space probe to go fucking look at it.
There you go. You could.
To tell it to go fuck itself.
It's like a butt, and that male scientists just want to penetrate that butt. That's what they want to do.
So fascism actually takes a few different forms, but is characterized an ideology with a few similarities. First,
rods, dicks, butts, and
they are
Kuiper belt.
always anti-liberal and anti-communist. And actually, they are often anti-conservatism. Though many current iterations of fascist ideology that we see in North America and in many parts of Europe include a kind of adherence to what they view as traditional Western culture. Fascism is also authoritarian in nature and nationalistic, with a well-regulated and protectionist attitude towards the economy. Though they are very pro-private industry, it is very anti-globalization ideology, which basically means fascists are cool with people owning businesses within their country or state and think most things should be privatized, but they want to regulate them and they don't want outside interference. Another thing that most versions of fascism have in common is that they are quite fond of symbols and charismatic leaders, that they can unite a group around and promote a positive view of violence, and they promote a positive view of violence and masculinity. Not to put too specific a name on it, but you can see why the fascists in the alt-right would follow a guy like Richard Spencer, who is decent-looking, well-built, and articulate.
Douchebag.
Yes. Fascists hate weakness. They see themselves as the strong ones, and they view practically every other political ideology as the weak ones. They are also obsessed with the decline of society and consider themselves to be the only ones able to repair it, which they will do by eliminating undesirables, whether by banishment or extermination. They view undesirables as impure, which can mean any number of things depending on which group of fascists we're talking about. Many consider members of the LGBTQ community or people with disabilities to be impure and think of them as disposable or degenerates.
That sounds familiar, like something that happened in like the 40s.
Yeah, something like that.
Sorry, can I also say something? You mentioned that fascists tend to have a certain idea of masculinity. They also have a specific idea of femininity. Women as mothers, women as, like there's very
strict roles,
gender roles. Yeah. Sorry.
No, for sure. There are a small number of fascist regimes that have taken power in a few countries since it became a political ideology in the late 19th century. Italy was fascist under Mussolini. Germany was fascist under Hitler. Some historians consider Napoleon III to have been the first fascist, though it wasn't called that at the time. Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil is a fascist who is in power right now.
Scary ass motherfucker.
Most references to fascism refer to Italy in the early 20th century, as that's where the name first appeared.
Is Duterte a fascist?
Duterte.
The Philippines guy?
I don't think so.
More of a dictator, isn't he?
Is he a dictator?
To be a fascist, you need a specific ideology. You can't just be like looking for power and abusing power. It can't be just that.
Yeah.
There's an ideology associated with it. Like, I wouldn't say Trump is a fascist because he's not smart enough to have an ideology. He's more of a... He's an opportunist
he
and a
exhibits
klepto.
fascist-like tendencies, though.
Like authoritarian tendencies.
Yeah, and nationalistic.
But he doesn't have any real political ideology.
I don't think he's really
Christmas message was like threatening.
I think it's just a show.
Well, maybe.
I think he's pure capitalist.
He's a kleptocracy. He's interested in what he can get for himself.
Yeah.
It's a selfishocracy, whatever that is. Like,
economically speaking, fascists are corporatists, which means they organize their society by corporate groups such as agriculture, labor, military, scientific, or other associations based on common interests. The idea is that when each group performs its designated function, society will run properly. Not entirely unlike, say, a syndicalist structure of society that some anarchists adhere to, except for the coercive nature of corporatism versus the voluntary nature of syndicalism. The Italian fascist regime first created a ministry of corporations that organized the Italian economy into 22 sectoral corporations. They banned workers' strikes and lockouts, and in 1927 created the Charter of Labor, which established workers' rights and duties and created labor tribunals to arbitrate employer-employee disputes. In practice, the sectoral corporations had no independence and were actually controlled by the fascist regime.
And it was very efficient.
Yeah. Employee organizations were rarely led by employees themselves, but instead by appointed fascist party members. This created a system in which employees had essentially no say in the conditions under which they labored. But I'm talking about fascism now because it seems to be pretty popular in the mainstream right now. Well, at least in mainstream conservatism or the right wing.
Yeah, it's really hard to see a difference in the States.
I'm just going to cover a little bit of a video by ContraPoints that she put out in September of 2017, and then I'm going to talk about where modern fascism seems to have gone since that video. In Contra's video, she lays out three main beliefs of today's fascists. The first is that people of European heritage constitute a biological, cultural, and political unity known as the white race, which is also often referred to as Western culture. Just as an aside, we now often see people in Canada referring to Canadian values or in the US as American values. This is another dog whistle to this white race unity, although it often includes religious aspect as well, also known as Christian values. Number two, Jews are masterminding the destruction of the white race through multiculturalism and non-white immigration. Fascists often refer to this as the white genocide or ethnic replacement. This fits into the idea of the decline of society that I mentioned earlier, and it's why you hear them chanting slogans like "You will not replace us" and "Blood and soil." And number three is the only way to save the white race is to establish a white homeland or ethno-state from which non-whites and degenerates can be purged. This is also fundamentally informed by their narrative about the decline of society and their view that they are strong enough to fix it as long as they expel the weak. So Contra has done a number of videos debunking these three core beliefs of fascists, but yet fascism persists. In her video Decrypting the Alt-Right, she points out that society under late-stage capitalism kind of sucks, and it leaves a space in the sense of identity the white men are seeking for that fascism can sneak into. White dudes are actually facing a number of challenges in modern society. I think the line from Fight Club actually says it pretty well when it points out that we were promised fame, fortune, and decadence as long as we worked hard. And now that we find that not only are we worse off than we were before, we have to compete with more than just other white dudes. We also have to compete with women, people of color, people with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQ community. We were told by TV, movies, and marketing departments that we were entitled to be at the top of the pyramid, and we found out that we are not entitled to that, and we won't even come close to reaching the top. I blame the rich, but for many men, it's easier to blame those who don't have power and are starting to gain equal footing. Thus, the rise of fascism and the resurgence of hostility to social progress in the mainstream. Who are the modern fascists? If you look online, you might see some people talking about race realism or race science. You might find people comparing slaves to drug dealers and espousing the value of having a whites-only nation. If you go into the boards on 4chan or 8chan, you will find them in there pretending they're sharing Nazi memes ironically, or giving pointers to each other and keeping a low profile until the time is right. In 2017, they marched on the city of Charlottesville. They are the alt-right, the Proud Boys, the KKK. You'll find some in red hats chanting "Build the Wall," and I think it's fair to say that in Canada, some of them are wearing yellow vests. Jair Bolsonaro is currently in charge of Brazil and plans to wipe out the indigenous peoples in the region so he can sell off Brazil's valuable rainforests. I'm currently quite concerned with the rise of fascism, and while they're taking heavy blows the last year or so, they keep coming back, and as long as the U.S. has a president that won't straight up disavow them, then they likely won't ever be gone here. I recently watched a video called A Night in the Garden, which showed 20,000 Americans in New York City in the year 1939. They were wearing swastikas and performing Nazi salutes and talking in much the same way we see Donald Trump and his ilk talking now. Talking about an ethnic group that isn't white, as though they were the root of all trouble, espousing the idea of American values. Fascism was always a part of American culture, and by extension, Canadian culture. I don't know how to defeat it, but the key in my mind is to keep an eye on them and never let them hide. If you see a fascist, let them know that you see them. If they know we're watching, then they can't build power unchecked.
Punch them in the face.
Also, vote for anyone who isn't a conservative or right-winger, because at this point, I think they've all been compromised. I wouldn't have called Harper a fascist, but I most certainly will call this new crop of conservative politicians we're seeing in Canada at least fascist-friendly.
I think Harper was fascist light.
Maybe.
Right at the end of his reign, he was just
you're right.
making arbitrary decisions.
But again, that's authoritarian, right? Like that's having to do with how he administers power, not...
That's why I said fascist. Like, it's not fascist, but...
Yeah.
And if the Jews had been trying to take over the world and everything, they had a couple thousand years. They would have accomplished it.
I'm just going to laugh.
All right.
It's better than crying.
So, let's move on to feedback.
Wait. Can I say something?
You bet.
Also, I love the TV show Man in the High Castle. So if you want to see kind of like a fictionalized, like what fascism. So the idea of the show is that is an alternative history where the Nazis won World War II, and so it's set in like the 60s, and like 2/3, like the eastern 2/3 of the country is controlled by the Nazis, the western third is controlled by the Japanese. And so if you want to see what fascism might manifest as, and just how the characters act and what the assumptions they make and how they interact with each other, you can kind of get the idea of that.
It's an awesome, really interesting show.
Yeah, I have like 3 episodes to watch in the last season, but yeah, it's awesome.
I'm only like halfway through the first season,
yeah,
so
it's good. The book's not so good.
No?
Yeah, it's slow.
The show's a little
Philip
slow
K.
too,
Dick
but...
is the show is like fast compared to the novel.
Right.
Like anyways. Philip K. Dick is not my favorite.
Philip K. Dick had a lot of really interesting ideas.
Yes, but as a writer, I just find him banal. Anyways,
I think that's pretty fair.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/Brainstorm Podcast Gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
Welcome to Secular Soup. I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Amy with an I.
And we're just 2 blueberries floating in a bowl of tomato soup. Stay tuned for real talk about atheism, feminism, politics, parenting, and whatever the fuck else we want to talk about, because this is our show. And get ready for a whole lot of motherfucking profanity. Buckle up, bitches. It's time to have some soup. I would tell them they can find us wherever podcasts are, but they're listening to this right now. So if you're that stupid that you're listening to this show and you don't know where to listen,
if we have to tell you how to find podcasts,
then you're hopeless.
All right, let's hit that outro music.
Yeah, let's.
For all the things, you can check out the show notes on our website, brainstormblog.net, and our hosting page, thebrainstormpodcast.com. Thanks to our financial supporters, Driffa, Kayla, Kim, Stephanie, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Aaron, Daryl, Bob Glenn, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical, Rob, the Podunk Polymath, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, Sauce Be Upon Him, Freethinker215, and Larry. When we hit 20 patrons, I will stop reading off all of them and just read the skeptic level and above. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. Or you can do a one-time donation at paypal.me/brainstormpodcast, or buy our stuff at tpublic.com/store/brainstorm-podcast-gear. Our next live show is on March 15th, and our guest will be Jonathan Maloney from intelligentspeculation.com, which is a website dedicated to critical thinking. I want to give a big thanks to Dr. Nicole Salazar for joining us for the Skeptic Studio portion. You can find more of her stuff at, what was it? Moveboldly.ly?
It was movebold.ly.
Movebold.ly.
So altogether, move boldly with a dot for the ly.
My hard drive's just dying here.
That's all right. Thanks, Dave, for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from Embrace the Void for doing the voiceover for our intro. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Kepper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music, which I'll insert later.
Yeah,
You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Make sure to tune in to brainstormafterhours.com for the bonus content before it goes patron only. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our subreddit. Share the show and spread the word. The more you share, comment, and like our stuff, the more it helps the show grow. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. Thanks, Dave, for the studio space, and thanks for listening. Remember, the truth matters.
The outro's done. We'll just do a disclaimer.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.